Welcome to Rosehill Cemetery. Now, we're just a little bit north of Chicago, Illinois right now, and this is one of the most historic and largest cemeteries in the area. There's a lot of interesting people here, a lot of very old monuments and memorials, and today we're going to walk around and I'm going to show you a few of them and tell you a little bit of the stories of them. Now, this here is, it just caught my eye, but this is the Loring Family Mausoleum. See if we can see anything in there. To be honest, I'm not really sure who the Loring family was, but they obviously had to be somewhat influential to afford a mausoleum like this. But a quick search online showed that there's been people that have come here before and checked with the cemetery office, and they basically told them that unless you're family, they're not going to give you any information. So don't expect a whole lot if you come here to visit, thinking that you're going to get some information from people who work here, because it doesn't quite seem to be that way. Just in front of me here in the center of the screen is the tomb of Darius Miller. Now there's a little bit of controversy about this tomb. Darius Miller was president of a railway. He lived from 1859 to 1914. Passed away at the age of 55 when he was on vacation in Montana with his wife. He collapsed and they weren't able to revive him, but he was fascinated with Egyptian art, as you can see from his tomb. And it's also said that he was at the historic opening of King Tut's tomb. And there is a kind of a theory that everyone who was present at that King Tut's tomb opening would be cursed with death. And it's said that he was no exception to that. And there's also a lot of paranormal people that claim that every May 1st there's an eerie blue light that comes from this tomb. So Darius Miller. Just over here is an American icon. Now, if you're a fan of meats and hot dogs during summer days, you're going to know this name. This over here is Oscar F. Meyer. He was the guy who famously brought us Oscar Mayer hot dogs, the Wienermobile. And he was born in 1859 in Germany. He came to America, and he spent his whole life working in meats. He ended up in Chicago. He started his business, and basically he was kind of pushed out of the building that he was renting initially. His landlord was a little bit jealous of his business and started jacking up the rent, and he ended up buying a larger operation, which helped him to grow his business. He ended up sponsoring the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, and by 1900 he had 43 employees. It's obviously much larger than that because they have merged with the Kraft Food Company, which is one of the biggest companies out there. So Oscar Mayer lived a pretty long life. Just over here is the tomb of a man who was important in American history, but not a lot of people know his name, and that would be Charles Daws. He was born in 1865 and he went to law school. He served as a general in World War I. President Warren G. Harding appointed him as the first director of the Bureau of the Budget, and he helped formulate the Daws plan to aid the struggling German economy at the time. Now, he was co-recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize in 1925, and then he was tapped to serve as vice president under Calvin Coolidge. Now, him and Coolidge didn't get along very well, and Daws developed some pretty good legislation that Coolidge ended up vetoing. But he is in here. Now, after he served as vice president, he became U.S. ambassador to the United Kingdom. He served as chairman of the board of the City National Bank for almost 20 years until his death in 1951 at the age of 85. Now, he has a pretty beautiful final resting place here just by the lagoon. But not a lot of people have really heard too much about Charles Daws, but he really did have a pretty important hand in a few things in American history. And he just led a fascinating life. I mean, he did a lot of different things in his life. You also never know what you're going to see when you visit this cemetery. There's usually a lot of deer roaming around. A lot of times you'll see foxes, coyotes. You just never really know, but it is a really nice area to just come for a walk. One of the other more interesting things about this cemetery is that it is home of a lot of haunted legends and lore. There's several different grave sites here and different monuments and memorials that a lot of paranormal researchers and explorers like to come and take a look at, and one of them is just over here. Well, this one that's encased in glass, this is the grave of Frances Pearce Stone, and she was the second wife of a grain tycoon named Horatio Odell Stone, and he was 24 years older than her, and I believe they got married when she was about 16 years old. But she gave birth to a daughter also named Frances when she was around 18 years old, and she passed away from some type of a sudden illness. Only a few months later, her daughter Frances passed away also, and they were both laid to rest right here. And as you can see, there is a very beautiful statue that was carved of Frances and her daughter, and it was encased here because a lot of times it's to protect, the art from the elements. You know, Chicago has pretty rough winters. There also are some haunted legends regarding this. Now, this is on several different haunted websites, and according to legend, on the anniversary of their deaths, there's a white haze that fills the glass box that's been placed over the monument. Now, there's a couple different reasons why this doesn't exactly make sense. Frances and her daughter, they did not pass away on the same day, so there isn't really an anniversary of both of their deaths. Now, the second thing is that the haze is most likely just condensation from changing in weather. I will say that if you happen to live in the Chicago area and are looking for a place to go and check out in terms of cemeteries, Rosehill Cemetery is probably one of the best, or Graceland Cemetery, which is just a couple miles down the road. This is why exploring cemeteries is fun, because look at the craftsmanship on this. Elizabeth Pauline Batchen, born in Scotland. Now, I really don't know who this is, but it is a very beautiful gravestone. And you really don't see much of this kind of stuff anymore. Now, I'll show you one more. This up here in front of me in the glass case, this is Lulu Fellows. And I believe this is her parents right here. But there is an interesting story with this one. This is another one that a lot of people say has a little bit of haunted legend and lore and mystique to it. But Lulu Edith Fellows, she passed away very young at the age of 16 years old from typhoid fever. Now, she was a rising elocutionist, which most people today have no idea what that is, but it was a profession back in the day that was like a theatrical reading of literature, famous speeches, poems, things like that. And nobody really does that anymore, but it was kind of a big thing back in the day, and she was kind of a rising star of that. She passed away in 1883, and I should note that this statue in here, it is a beautiful statue. It was carved by a guy named A.E. Gage, and he also created the Inez Clark statue at Graceland Cemetery that I showed you last year. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. It's worth watching. It's a very interesting monument. Hopefully you enjoyed this little stroll through Graceland Cemetery, one of Chicago's largest and most historic cemeteries. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video.